You're listening to 105.9 Academy FM, the community radio station for Folkestone. My name's Dave Sharp. Here at Academy FM, we've offered all the general election candidates for Folkestone and Hythe a chance to tell our audience a bit about their party, their political views and their preparation for the election. In this interview, I spoke to the Labour candidate for Folkestone and Hythe, Claire Jeffrey. So Claire, tell me, what do you think are the most important issues for Folkestone and Hythe?
Probably the most pressing one, I think, at the moment is housing and lack of affordable, decent housing, especially for young people and especially for families. I think another big issue is we seem to have been driven into becoming a very low-wage economy, which in turn, the knock-on effect from that is the cost of living, and the cost of living for ordinary people, a lot of whom are working. I was very, very shocked to find out recently that a third of households on housing benefit are working households in this area.
In terms of Labour Party policy and what your party would do if it was in power, what would you actually do about housing and low wages, seeing as we're really just coming out of a recession? What would your party do?
Well, for a start, we'd make sure that there was a decent living wage paid to people of £8 an hour. The Labour Party has said they want this by 2017. I personally think we should have it now. I'd like to go a bit further than that. That's where I deviate slightly, but that is a personal view. We have pledged we will build 200,000 houses in the next 5 years, and we'll provide social housing for people that need it. We'll also regulate the private rented sector, which is a real problem in this area. I think it's around 32% of our housing stock in this constituency is rented. I personally, again, would like to go further. I'd like to see council housing built again. I'd like the council here to use some of the capital they've amassed from selling off the council houses, which I think is around about 20 million, and invest it and build on brownfield sites. We've got loads of them. It makes me very angry. We've got that huge site in Ship Street, perfect site for housing, and then that's what we need.
So you're interested in actually going back to building council
certainly.
houses? That's not party policy, is it? Is that just you?
Well, our party policy is social housing, which is usually delivered in partnership with housing associations. In another life and career, that was my role to do that. Councils are building again. My party's policy is for councils to build, but I want mass building on the sort of scale we had after the Second World War.
Now, you've been going around speaking to quite a lot of people. You're
starting
your campaign. You mentioned housing and low wages being an issue. Tell me what other issues that people on their doorsteps are telling you about, they're concerned about.
Well, immigration obviously is the big one, isn't it? Ironically, we're one of the areas in the country with the lowest immigration here. What it is it's hard times. In hard economic times, the middle ground always disappears, sadly, and people look for somebody to blame. You know, the facts are we have very, very low immigration here. We don't have any asylum seekers, because if they're asylum seekers, they're taken away and dealt with, aren't they? And granted or not granted asylum. I think the real issue is people are desperate and people are frightened and people don't like change. And it's talking about that to people and educating people.
If immigration isn't such a big thing around here, why do you think many people around here are turning to parties like UKIP, which say, you know, let's get out of Europe, let's be much, much tougher on immigration? What is it in this area that seems to be doing okay that makes people want to vote for UKIP?
It's because they are perceived to be anti-establishment, which is incredible, because I think how people can think that a millionaire ex-stockbroker who went to public school and is an ex-conservative is anti-establishment. But that's what people see them as. And I think there's a lack of faith and a lack of trust in politicians. People feel very let down by politics and the political system as a whole. And I think that's why we're seeing the rise of parties like UKIP and the Greens, who are seen as anti-establishment.
Do you think that more politicians should be a little bit more outspoken regarding their personal opinions rather than just following party lines?
Yes, I do. I mean, my political hero, I will say, is Dennis Skinner. He's fabulous. I've been lucky enough to meet him on a good few occasions now, and what I really like about him is there's passion, and when he gets up and speaks, he believes in what he's saying, and and he likes the fight, and he will take the fight to what he's fighting for, and that's what we need. And the reason he's passionate is because he cares. He genuinely cares. I've been outspoken all my life. I've got myself in trouble because of it, so hopefully I have tempered that now. But I do think people want to see that. I certainly want to see see that. I want to see somebody who really cares, not just somebody who's going to sit and trot out the party line. You know, I could sit and do that now. I could sit and recite all of Labour's pledges, but, you know, what would be the point? That's boring. I wouldn't want to listen to that.
A lot of people talking about Europe at the moment, especially with UKIP being quite big on the scene. David Cameron is promising a referendum, something that the Labour Party doesn't seem that keen on. What are your views, though?
My views personally, I believe we should have a referendum. Something that's very much growing within the Labour Party at the moment. A lot of other Labour parliamentary candidates and MPs are coming to this view that I personally believe it's undemocratic. I think it's wrong for us to sit there and say, no, we will not do this. We need to listen to the people. Labour as a party, we know we got it wrong before. We have said so publicly, and it's a crucial debate and dialogue that we need to have.
Considering public opinion at the moment, there's a likelihood that we would come out of Europe. Do you think this would be a good thing for this local area if we were out of Europe?
I think it would be disastrous if we were out of Europe. I've recently had some statistics through from our Labour MEP, Annalise Dodd. She's been doing some work around this area, and currently at the moment it's around 5,000 jobs in this constituency are dependent on us being in the EU.
What interests me is in this area, if you compare us with, say, Dover, parts of Thanet, Labour has never done well in Folkestone and Hythe. And we've had the Conservative Party currently with a 10,000 majority or so, and the Lib Dems coming second. But right here, Labour doesn't do well. You must have thought about this quite a lot. Why?
Yes.
Why are you failing? Why have you failed in this area?
I think we failed in this area. We had a very moribund local Labour Party in recent years. I mean, in the 90s, we had, the 97, we had 15 Labour councillors. And we had a Labour mayor, John Stockham, as well, who's still very active locally in the Labour Party. And then they lost their seats in, I think would have been about 2002, and the party just became moribund. Everyone just sort of drifted away. And party membership dropped. And when I first became active within the local Labour Party, it was just sort of group of people who were very disparate, who weren't really unified. And over the last probably 2-3 years, we've had to work really hard to rebuild our party locally, which is going fantastically well. We've got a decent membership now. We're out there campaigning, but it's hard work building a party. And I think with the rise of the Lib Dems, that was around 2003 when they won all their seats. I think they filled the vacuum left by Labour. I think they were there, they were organised, and they filled that vacuum. I don't think they're going to do so well this time, though, I think nationally.
In the national polls at the moment, it's fair to say the Lib Dems aren't doing particularly well, but they have a well-known local candidate.
They do, I know her very well, actually, yes.
Lynn Beaumont. Who are you targeting, though? Are you actually trying to take voters from Lynn Beaumont, or are you trying to take prospective UKIP voters or maybe disgruntled Tory voters? Who are you focusing on?
All of them, really. All of those groups. Everybody. I mean, the message I'm giving is I'm the only candidate that's truly local that is actually from here. I grew up here. I went to school here, and I care passionately about this area. And I think, you know, at a local level, that's what's really important. It needs to be somebody who really cares. I'm not a career politician remotely. And the thing with, Lynn works very hard in the community. I do know that.
You're going to have your work cut out, it's fair to say, in this area. We all know that. But we might be in a situation nationally where Labour have a majority, but have to be backed by other parties. And people are talking a lot at the moment about the Scottish nationalists. I'd like to find out what your views are on that, and also whether you think that we should have more powers devolved locally to our local councils here in England.
Obviously, there is, as you say, there's an awful lot of talk about sort of Labour and the SNP. All I can really say on that is, obviously, I would far prefer an outright majority. I want a Labour government. If there was any form of sort of coalition or working partnership, I think it would have to be very carefully negotiated. And concerning devolution, I'm all for more powers being devolved to local authorities. I think a lot of the problem is that the country is run from Westminster, and it differs so much in the regions, and I think that's certainly discussions that need to take place. What worries me is I wouldn't want anything to be rushed through very quickly, which I think is the fear at the moment, is that there'll be a knee-jerk, with Cameron's government going, oh yes, quick, we must do this.
Whoever is in government, they're going to have the issue of a very big national debt to deal with. In terms of your personal opinion, do you think that bringing the debt down should be a priority on the scale of what people like the Tories are talking about, or whether we should actually be thinking about that quite a lot less and just spending more money on improving the current state of our NHS and other services?
Absolutely, we should. Harsh austerity cuts don't promote growth. I think America has been a really good example of that. They were in the huge recession as well. Obama has spent money, invested, created jobs, and now they're back on an even keel. Labour will bring the debt down, but we'll do it in a much gentler and fairer way. We won't do it by making harsh austerity cuts, which is what's currently happening. I mean, again, this is me speaking personally as well. I think we haven't gone far enough to send a strong anti-austerity message, but we need to. How we would finance it, it's easy. Make people pay the taxes, tax millionaires, close these awful tax loopholes. That on its own would pay for the NHS and bring services back into public ownership.
Are you talking about recreating, British Rail and bringing that into public ownership?
Definitely. I'd like to see transport back in public ownership. I mean, it's just mad at the moment. The East Coast Railway, which is the only one still in public ownership and making a profit, and the coalition want to sell it. It's just bonkers. It's crazy. Obviously the NHS is Labour's biggest issue at the moment nationally, and that must stay public. I think that has to stay public. There's no mandate for that to be sold. It would just be awful. It's a real, it's probably Labour's biggest ever achievement is the NHS, and I don't want my children to grow up in a society like America. I was in New York a couple of years ago, and a cyclist got knocked off his bicycle by a taxi, and the first responders pulled up, and this guy was lying bleeding in the road, and they made sure he'd got his health insurance card. It was unbelievable. I don't want us to have a society like that at all. My other issue and burning issue for Labour, I would like to see Labour have said they will regulate energy companies so they can't keep putting prices up. I think it's morally wrong for utility companies to be in private ownership. I think it's absolutely dreadful that profit can be made on them. I'd like to see those renationalised. So again, that's another bit where I differ a bit from the main party line.
To get these messages across, you're going to have to talk to quite a lot of people in one way or another. We have going on knocking on doors or standing on a soapbox in the town centres or social media. How are you going to do this?
By a combination of those things, an awful lot of door knocking, an awful lot. Labour have always said we win on the doorsteps. We're the only party that goes out every day and knocks on doors and talks to people. Social media, I think, is important as well. I've got a very active campaign page on Facebook and just listening to them and hearing their experiences and listening to what they want. I think people get sick of politicians telling them what they should be doing and what their priorities are. They want to set their own, so we need to be better at listening.
You're listening to 105.9 Academy FM, the community radio station for Folkestone. My name's Dave Sharp, and I was speaking to the Labour candidate for Folkestone and Hythe, Claire Jeffrey. The full list of general election candidates for Folkestone and Hythe is Lynn Beaumont, Lib Dem, Damian Collins, Conservative, Seth Cruz, TUSC, Claire Jeffrey, Labour, Rohan Kapoor, YPP, Andy Thomas, Socialist Party of Great Britain, Martin Wybrow, Green Party, and Harriet Yeo, UKIP. For more information and interviews, head to academyfmfolkstone.com.